My name is Caleb. Thanks for joining me for this video. So, filmed this a few times. Now. Gonna try to keep this at like 6 minutes, right? So I'm gonna run through everything. 1080 Ti for photo and video editing, especially for video editing, because when I was trying to research and stuff, I didn't really come across too much stuff on editing in DaVinci Resolve. So, for reference, I am running a budget system. It's not so budget now because I dropped some money on a new graphics card. So I'm no longer using the 1080 Ti. But I still recommend it if you're on a budget and you're looking for a good card on a budget. And by budget I mean under 250 because I got this card for 250 Canadian when I was looking for a new card but didn't want to spend too much money. Um, the rest of my system is a 3950X, which is like the second or third best card you can get, third generation Ryzen. 64 gigabytes of RAM at 3200 megahertz, and then Windows 10 on an NVMe drive. So it's as fast, almost as fast as you could get on third generation Ryzen. And then I paired up, or I group it up with the 1080 Ti. So when I made that adjustment before I had a 1060 Ti, the 1060 Ti is actually amazing for games still, right? Especially if you're playing like basic games like Fortnite and thing, right? But when it came to editing, it started to show its age a little bit for me. So it was lagging a little bit in the photo editing, and my exports were taking 1 to 2 minutes. I use Affinity Photo, by the way. Um, but and then I don't even remember what it was like for video editing, but I could only imagine it was just as bad, a little bit laggy and all of that, right? But then this prompted me to get the 1080 Ti because as you progress in your career or as you progress with your skills or whatever with editing, both photos and video, the bottleneck goes from you because you just don't know what the hell you're doing to the computer because now you know what you're doing and the computer can't go as fast as you're trying to go. So that's where I ended up, right? Trying to do things and the computer was holding me back, and I can go drink water and use the washroom and come back and my photo exports are not done. That wasn't cutting it. So get a 1080 Ti and was really, really happy until like 3 days ago. So let's jump into DaVinci Resolve now because for photo editing it was great. For DaVinci Resolve, you can do a 1080p timeline pretty comfortably, which is good, right? You could edit 1080p timeline in real time, smooth playback and everything. Unless you're doing high frame rate footage and you have it playing with the drop frame, so like normal speed, it's very stuttery. But if you convert it to a 24 p timeline, let's say, so you convert it to whatever timeline you're working in, so which means it'll play like slow motion. It played buttery smooth, full resolution playback, right? But the moment you speed that up again, right, so you it ends up playing stuttery again. So what I was finding was if I just run it at a half resolution playback, it was fine. Another hack in the event that you're doing a lot of complex, maybe fusion and a lot of complex transitions and stuff, if the 1080p timeline, even at half resolution playback, maybe even quarter resolution playback, is still stuttering, bump your timeline down. So make your timeline play resolution 720p, and then you will still have the option to do half resolution of that or quarter resolution of that. So that should help drastically. So whenever I found myself in a situation where a 1080p timeline was still a little bit stuttery, you could do that. And then once you're done editing, before you export, bump your timeline back up so you will have a higher resolution export, right? Because if you export on a lower resolution timeline like 720p versus 1080p, it's going to look worse, right? No matter what resolution you try to export as, if your timeline is lower, the resolution in the end will be lower. So don't forget to bump it back up. But yeah, I had no problems, no complaints really editing on the 1080p timeline. But the one Achilles heel that I found, which made me upgrade, was the exports. So I didn't notice it at first. So I exported a 4K video. It was 12 minutes. It was all 4K footage, a mix of 10-bit 422. All of it was high megabit per second, or megabyte per second, however you say footage. And it was about 12 minutes worth once it was all cut down and transitioned and everything. And it took about an hour and 45 or 2 hours and 45. So it took a long time to export. And it didn't occur to me that it shouldn't be that long. Not to mention, I'm like, it's a 1080 Ti, right? It's not like it's the best card on the market. So maybe it should be this long, right? But then you watch some more videos and you realize that is a little bit too long because some people edit exporting longer timelines like 30 minutes and stuff. So I started to look into it a little bit more, but this is where it just really got me, right? So I did that export, didn't think twice about it. When I tried to do a 6-minute video and the computer told me it's going to take an hour, that's when I had enough. Because that time, so this was like 3 days ago, that time in particular, I wanted to keep editing photos, but I felt like I couldn't because what if it got to 50 minutes, right? So 10 minutes left. And then the computer decided to crash because I'm doing too much on it. So for about an hour, I couldn't do anything else except watch YouTube videos, and maybe that I shouldn't have even done. So for me, that was my cue to upgrade the graphics card to something where it would be faster, slash maybe I could still continue to do other work while it's exporting. Another thing worth noting, 1080 Ti runs a bit hot, but of course if you have good cooling in your computer, it's not going to be too much of an issue. But yeah, the one workaround to the crazy export time on the 1080 Ti, because it definitely isn't optimized for DaVinci exporting, right? It still runs your edit. You can still edit pretty nicely, but the export is a no. So the one workaround is to do your export overnight. If you can do your export overnight, then you don't have to worry about the loss in productivity. But if you're like me, where you find yourself regularly in situations where, you need to keep editing while this thing is exported, then you're going to need to upgrade. But ultimately, if you're on a budget, that may not be an option. This is probably the best budget card you can find. Everything else that's good is crazy. From the research that I've done, it's crazy expensive, man. It's worth it, right? If you could find them for a reasonable price, but they're expensive, right? So that was it. That's my quick review / recommendation on the 1080 Ti, and how you could get the best out of it in DaVinci Resolve. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments. See you in the next video. Next one is going to be about the new card that I actually bought. So see you in the next one.